Brandy Bear, if you just look down the row here, just kind of take it a little bit slow, you can see there's production. Even in this heat, we have little babies. You can see some babies growing, some smaller ones growing here. If you look down in the flowers here, I'm taking a chance on breaking this for the camera show, but if you look here, down here, these are going to start growing. Hey everybody, this is Brent in Central Arkansas. This video has been a long time coming and I'm excited to share it with you. Previously there were things there was so much going on with everything that's related to this video that I couldn't discuss it. But generally now I can talk about it a little bit more in depth. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I shifted from hydroponic type growing to traditional gardening. And the reason why I did that shift was to support the tomato breeding projects that I've been having because they elevated in importance above everything else. And the reason why they elevated in importance so much is because of their capability. And everything I started doing over the last few years surrounded that capability, all of my work. In order to bring it to you in depth and explain really what I'm talking about, what I'm going through for quite some time now, it makes for a lengthy video. So I talk about everything related to parthenocarpy. I talk about what it means and why it's important. All those details are in this video. One of the main questions I get, I put a couple videos up on my seedless tomatoes and even talk about parthenocarpy some, but one of the main questions I get is always, when are the seeds going to be available? You know, because you know, you're able to see that there is a good bit of benefit, especially in heat related areas, to having a parthenocarpic variety. And it has always been very difficult for me to explain why that is without letting information go that was important into securing it. In this video I explain that quite a bit more, but basically it's to protect my work and everything that I put into it. I put years into this, and the first thing is I had to make sure I knew what I was talking about. So I had to test it year after year after year, all year long through the winter too. And then after testing it, you know, I had to document everything in detail. And then after doing all that, I had to find some people to help me validate that I know what I'm talking about. And then after that, I had to take precautions to keep someone from taking it. I went through a paranoia phase where I bought cameras and put them all around the house and all that sort of thing. And I was, you know, with everything I put into it, I didn't want someone to walk up to the property and just take it, you know. So all of those have been considerations that have kind of downplayed me talking about it in depth, but I'm now ready to talk to you about it because I have I'm in the process of getting it tested, and I'm at a level of protection now where I feel comfortable enough to talk about it. So again, this is a long video and there's a lot of information in it, and I think if you have any desire to improve tomato growing in your area or your environment, whether it's too cold or too hot, you might find this video informative and interesting. So thanks for watching, and we'll get going with the video. This is not ideal growing right now because we're in mid-August and the temperatures have been over 100 degrees. I have grown Celebrity as a comparison against my two rows here. Brandy Bear will identify the Celebrity here on the bottom. You've got this from this pot here to that pot there next to the very end. The very end one is a better boy. So let's take a look at the Celebrity. You can see where some of the fruit that was previously pollinated are growing, but they're not turning, and that's heat will do that. It'll delay ripening or prevent ripening actually. But there's no, if you look up, there's no baby tomatoes on any of these plants. See, like this here, these trusses here, the flowers, they're not producing anymore. And the reason why they're not producing anymore is because the intense heat. What the intense heat does is, you'll see over here is a couple, is it prevents pollination because the pollen desiccates. It shrivels and it becomes non-viable, and it probably just the heat itself just absolutely whacks it, kills it. Brandy Bear, if you just look down the row here, just kind of take it a little bit slow, you can see there's production. Even in this heat, we have little babies. You can see some babies growing, some smaller ones growing here. If you look down in the flowers here, I'm taking a chance on breaking this for the camera show, but if you look here, down here, these are going to start growing. These are little bitty babies, and these babies, let me see if I can see, here's one up here. If you look through the flower, they're starting to develop even when the flower hasn't died back, and that is very typical of Pat B. Let's see if this one's doing it. Yeah, you can see if you look down in here, if I move aside the petals, you can see the little, make sure I got that here, you can see the little petals are starting to bust through the petal. But we've got some fruit set going on all the way down. You can see it here in the little ones. Even with the disease pressure, it's still trying to make little tomatoes. You can see a double here, single. Let me see if I can see any up here on these. I need to get the camera involved. Let's see here. We'll take this flower and peel it back a little bit. You see that little fruit there? It's continuing to grow tomatoes in the heat. And in a lot of places, you cannot grow tomatoes in the South, almost all of the South. You cannot grow tomatoes in July and August. Not very well, because any potential, oh dang, I just picked that one off and it had a little tomato in it. But any high heat or even cold will stop tomato production. And that's the wonderful thing about Pat B, and I keep harping on that. But it's not just heat, it's also cold. When it gets below a certain temperature, the pollen clumps. They say it clumps. Let me step back into the shade. It's over 100 degrees out here, and it's boiling me while I'm filming. But yeah, whenever it gets too cold or even too humid, the tomato pollen clumps and it doesn't pollinate. No matter what kind of insects you have, or no matter if you water it or flick it by hand or use a pollinating brush or toothbrush or whatever you use to pollinate, if it's too cold, it's not going to pollinate the fruit. And so I've tested Pat B also in the winter grow room, which is right here behind that air conditioner. It's going in right now, and they Pat B grows during the cold and heat. It's 35 degrees in here, and plants appear to be doing okay, more or less. But I wanted to show you here. Let me open my phone here. Hey Google, what's the temperature outside?
In North Little Rock, it's currently 3 degrees. Due to current wind conditions, it feels like it's minus 14.
Yeah, that's what's going on. It hasn't been this cold in I can't remember, in the past more than 10 years. I can't even remember it being this cold since I've been here 30 years. But yeah, now just trying to keep these bad boys alive in this weather, and you can see it's in the 30s. So I turned the lights on. They were off when I came out here, and I think the extra heat generated from the lights may help, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30, something like that. It was on my phone, I just showed you. So hopefully the lights will help warm things up in here a little bit more, but I can't get below freezing or we're done with these. In trying to find out what causes my genetics to work in the plants to cause them to be parthenocarpic, you have to do a lot of work, and I didn't realize how much work it is. But essentially it's a two-part process. You have to phenotype it, which means that you come out here and you grow it and you assess each plant, which is something I've been talking about quite a bit. And that's where I take the fruit, I weigh it, I see if it has seeds in it, I check the bricks and all that. But primarily for this, you check in to see if it has seeds, if it grows in really hot weather and stuff like that. And that is phenotyping. You look at what the plant looks like and does physically. And so that is my part of the equation. What I can't do is the next step. I can gather the material and I can send it, but the next step is genotyping. And genotyping is looking at the genetics of the plant, I guess under a microscope. I don't know exactly how they do it. They run tests and they're able to assess where on the chromosome things are, and they compare them to other tomatoes, and they do this very long process. It's been about 1.5 years now since I started the testing. So the phenotyping and genotyping put together and compared to each other creates the finding of the genetics that causes my type of parthenocarpy. I call it PAT-B, which stands for parthenocarpic-B for Brent, because that was the first cultivar that had the mutation. So PAT-B, PAT-B. That is my form of parthenocarpy. And so since that time, I've been breeding, gathering information, phenotyping it all, assessing it. And from the phenotyping, I can tell that my plants were parthenocarpic. I just didn't understand what caused it. I also compared it to other forms of parthenocarpy, more specifically than any, Oregon State University, because they're the ones who put out commercial varieties that have parthenocarpic genes. And that is PAT2, PAT-2. And they were not very successful, but they caused a lot of scientists all over the world to try to get PAT2 to do what I know my version, PAT-B, will do. And it'll grow tomatoes consistently without affecting the plant. It'll do it in hot and cold. It's not environment dependent. Anyway, there's a lot of steps involved with the phenotyping, and now I'm to the genotyping area where I have to gather the materials and send it off. So let me briefly explain here. What you see here is a shoot detector bag, and all that is just a bag where I'll collect a sample, like you'll see here, of a growing tip, a shoot. I can take it from a sucker, or I can take it from the very tip of the plant, and I shove it in this little shoot detector bag. And then after I gather a sample from all the plants that I want to test, I send it off to the people that do the testing, and they do the genetic work. They assess the genetic capability through a lot of their in-depth genotyping, which I don't understand, but evidently there's millions and millions of genetic combinations in tomato, and it's a long process to figure it out, because not only do you have to assess where it may be, in order to get that you have to compare it to other tomato cultivars, and you have to do like I did last year, where I cross one parthenocarpic variety of mine, my cherry tomato Brent, with another cherry tomato that is not parthenocarpic. I save the seed, and then I grew out 100 plants in the second generation. And the second generation is the generation you want to assess, because the genetics are all over the place. And so from that, there'll be a small percentage that'll be parthenocarpic, and there'll be a percentage that's not. And so in that 100 sample that I sent off for testing, there will be a lot of measurements taken genetically to determine where the one, and then I also phenotype that grow last year, 100 plus plants, and I compared what I saw to what they tested, and we've come out with a baseline. And since that baseline last year into this year, we have to further test it. And so we go into the worldwide database of all the tomato cultivars that have been completely genetically run, and we compare it to that. Anyway, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot more than what I'm explaining, and I don't fully understand it. But my part also is gathering the shoots, the growing tips, like I mentioned, refrigerating it, don't let it get hot or wilt, and then FedExing it overnight to the lab so they can deep freeze it, really sub below zero, deep freezing, and then run it through the lab to do further testing. So that's what I'm doing today, is gathering plant material to send off for testing.